Hi guys, Henry here, following on from my most recent video, which hopefully went up on the same day as this one will. Following on from that basic theme of rescaling my itty-bitty 6mm miniatures to, well, look better proportioned. Because, as I said, my ego gets pricked when people tell me that my guys look like stubby little dwarfs and malformed, because I don't know what a 6mm miniature is. So what we're going to be doing is seeing in an unscripted, spontaneous way how I would go about using the Blender files available to the public. This is the Great War Western Front Blender exporter, which you can buy on My Mini Factory, or you might have got via the World War I Kickstarter. We're going to be changing this sculpt so it looks like a better 15mm, because this is natively scaled for 6mm. For most ability levels and in most situations, I'd recommend just rescaling the STLs, non-uniformly rescaling. If you didn't see that video, I will put a link in the description. It is the video that went up before this one. But this is for those situations where that either isn't good enough, or maybe you've got a bit of an eye for detail and you just want the perfect solution. This video is going to assume you have some knowledge of Blender. I will be narrating everything I do and every key I press, but it's not intended as a hold your hand tutorial. The pacing might be a bit fast. I have got other videos on this channel where that are more tutorial focused, where I go over like simple Blender controls and things like that. So you might want to watch those either before watching this or perhaps alongside. Maybe consult them if you run into a wall where I say something that's just confusing. Right, well, let's get on with it. In front of us, I've just opened the Great War Western Front exporter, as I said. I see this guy's kit is a bit mixed up, so I'm just going to make sure this is definitely set to all the British stuff first. I think on his legs, he's got some German stuff enabled. No? Ah, yeah, German is toggle on there. So yeah, now just the British stuff. Now, I think we're going to start with what might be the easiest thing to change, that will also be the most noticeable, the biggest change we can make. He's got officers' lapels on there. Where are they? It's been a while since I've used this. Just search officer lapel. What folder is that? Okay, hide that. Alright, we're going to start with the simplest change we can make, which is, if you look at this figure, yeah, he does look a bit stubby. His legs are rather short. If this was a real human being, we would think he had quite short legs. Simplest way to change that I think could well be enough just for us to say job done, is click, drag, select, press the G key for grab, which lets us move, but press the Z key to lock to the Z axis. So that was G and then Z. And just move these legs down to about here. Maybe a bit higher up. About there, right? Select the legs, hit the sculpting tab up here, hit remesh, and just leave this alone. Ideally, it should just be set to whatever I last used when I remeshed it. Click remesh, and what's happened is the model has had its mesh changed to a more detailed one, which means we can sculpt it. I've pressed the G key for grab again. I'm using the grab tool. Right clicking, reducing my radius. Gonna grab the knees. I'm not gonna walk you through these camera controls. I'm sorry, because I've changed the bindings. I don't know what they are by default in Blender, so it'd be useless for me to tell you. This is the orthographic view. As you can see up here, left orthographic, right orthographic. It's just good if you want to look flat on to one angle. Right. Using the G key, I've got symmetry enabled down here. And I'm going to just adjust the legs. I'm left clicking and dragging. Actually, do I want symmetry on? These aren't symmetrical legs. Now let's turn symmetry off. Just changing the legs so they look right. This is something where it just comes down to your instincts. Putting symmetry back on to do the butt. Always the most awkward part of the sculpt. Right, pinching these in. Right, that looks better. He'll want knees though, And since he's not going to be a 6mm figure, we're aiming for like 15mm proportions here. We could slim him down a bit. Oh, I am sorry, that's my WhatsApp. This is a one take. This is a one take video. I'm not going back and re-recording because of stupid little mistakes like that. Okay, that is good. For the knee, I would use the grab tool again, and you want to just sort of like shift upward. So like dragging out, shift up. Doesn't need to look right. We're just getting the basic shape right. Pinch it in, shift out. Again, I apologize if this is going too fast. I've not changed the tool I'm using. This has all been with the grab tool so far. Right. Just clicking and dragging, slimming that leg down. I'm going to hit remesh one more time just to make sure, because if you look, maybe it isn't necessary, but when you're dragging things, you're literally just moving it like that, but in a different way. So if I would like do this, it would, you see it sort of spreads out more. I'm pressing Control Z for undo. So that's why you remesh this so that the vertices become evenly dispersed again. We're going to change tool now. We're going to change to the crease tool, which is this bottommost blue one. Changing the radius again, putting the strength up a bit. Remember, I opened this menu by right-clicking in empty space. And we're just drawing on some cloth folds, because you see, while the model looked fine when it was this tall, if it's 15mm, it's going to be like that tall. We want some cloth on it. Now, if you left-click normally, you sort of carve. If you hold the Control key while you're using a tool, you use its alternate mode, and for the crease tool, that makes it protrude. So this is how I do cloth folds and things like that. Control, I'm holding Control, holding left click. For legs, you sort of do a kind of a V shape like this. I don't like how that looks, sorry. I often do this. I'll do it and I'll hit undo when I say I don't like how it looks. But you're just sort of like following the leg. Now where you've got the knee, you're obviously going to have it arcing off a bit. No, I don't like that either. That. Reduce the strength. So it just comes down to what looks right, doesn't it? I'd say I'm a little flustered because I'm kind of rushing this as a tutorial, so I'm just going to fix this using the grab tool where it's just come out a little too far. We'll also use the smooth tool a bit. But yeah, there we go. Now using the normal draw tool, which is similar to the crease tool but less sharp, I can make, using the normal left click, increasing the smoothing, which makes it less of a harsh edge. I'm just putting like a kind of bump on the top of the legs, like on the thigh. Gonna raise that knee. These legs still look a little too tubby for 15mm, so let's pinch them in. And I would say it's not perfect, but it's certainly looking much better. All right. Yeah, what would you guys say to that? Good. Now, next thing I want to do is, we're going to assume this is good enough. I mean, you could work on this much longer. This was a bit of a rush job, but clicking on this, click on this little blue wrench down here. This is where you see the modifiers on a model. Now, each one of these things is it's a vertex. So because we remeshed this, this is now quite a big file. It's made the file bigger. You don't necessarily benefit from this extra detail when the model's that big. So what we want to do is we want to decimate this. So this is this removes vertices. The face count here is how many faces, like these four together make a face. This is how many faces are on the model. We've got 182,918. At 15mm, I would say you want about 20,000, not 182,000 on some trousers. So let's change this to 0.1, which means it'll only have 10% of the original faces. We're down to 33,000, and you can see the detail. That detail is lost. You know what? I take that back. Let's not go for 20,000. Let's go for 40,000 or thereabouts. So I'm doing 0.15, just until it looks right. That's fine. Okay. Click apply. And if you do decimate a model like that, remember this model was already decimated. All I did was just hit remesh. So you can still play with stuff that you've already decimated. This is just easier on your hard drive, you know. And you'll notice if I try to sculpt it now, the fidelity isn't as good. That's why we remeshed before we sculpted. I could spend hours just tinkering with cloth folds here. So let's move on. It's not perfect, but let's move on. Working our way up the body. I think his webbing is fine, and we will probably leave unaltered. It's maybe a little thick, a little chunky, since these are all designed with minimum printing thicknesses for 6mm, but I'm going to say it's fine. So I'm just going to hide this. I'm left-clicking different pieces, pressing the H key to hide, because now we're moving on to the torso. Now, this isn't really addressing questions of proportions. You know what? I would say, strictly speaking, we could just export this model now and rescale him to, with uniform rescaling to 140%, but let's keep going. We're going to now change this tunic, because the tunic, how I make my tunics is they're actually just basic shapes. Remember vertices are the detail points of the model. This model only has a handful of vertices. That's because it's using a subdivision, so there's like a kind of, I don't know if you call it an algorithm or what. I'm not actually that good with computing terms and things, but there's a modifier on this which is making it into a more complicated shape, despite it only being a simple one. I like this because this way I can easily make a shape. But if we're making a 15mm model, we want it to have cloth folds. We're going to click Object, Convert Mesh. What that does is it applies all the modifiers on a model in one click. Instead of, it would take me 4 clicks to do this. Instead I can do it in 2. And now you see it's got all the extra vertices added to it by the modifier. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit Sculpt, Remesh, not 0.1. 0.1 is the default remesh value it will give you, and you will crash your computer if you're not careful. Or sorry, crash the program. You want to start with something conservative and see how it goes. We're going to start with 15mm. 15mm was perfect. There we go. Go to the crease tool, which we used earlier, and we're just going to add some cloth creases to this, just to give it a feeling of texture. You know, we will use symmetry mode. This is how I always start, just some simple drawings like this. Remember, this is going to be covered with webbing anyway, so it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to leave that as it is, that's fine. Alright, decimate. 0.1 is what I usually start with, see how it looks. Yeah, that's fine. Then I add planar decimation, which is just an extra type of decimation. Explaining what it does, anything less than 1 degree just gets, like, sorry, any faces with multiple groups of faces, anything that's got an angle of less than 1 degree on it just gets merged into a single face. So if I were to apply the modifiers, you'll see the bottom of this, the top of it there has become like a single face because the angle is less than 1 degree. It just saves more space. It saved us 2,000 vertices there. I'm also going to do something else. This is a lazy approach. I'm going to press the S key for scale. And if you move the mouse, you scale. Press Z to lock up the Z axis. I'm just going to lengthen it a bit to a more realistic length, because on the 6mm it's too short. Right, we're working our way up the body. The belt we can just leave as it is, I think. Let's get onto the torso. I'm going to hide everything except the torso. What I've done is I've pressed the A key to select all. Press the B key, which is to deselect. I'm holding Shift and just dragging off over the body, so I get only the body here now. I'm going to remesh it. Symmetry tool while I work on the back. I don't like that. Doesn't This is all going to be covered up by webbing. This is just to give it sort of an illusion of definition. We can use some creases to join it over the tops of the arms so it looks like it's a single piece. And now the smooth tool, the top red one, can get rid of these clefts. Like using an eraser, you know, get rid of the pixelization there. We can thin out the arms. Again, using my grab tool, G key, just pinch the arms up a bit, make them look more realistically proportioned. We're not going to modify the hands. You could arguably slim down the hands, but heroic style sculpting miniatures have big hands and heads, and hands are kind of complicated to deal with. And I'm conscious of time. You know, I need to retain your attention, right? You're drifting off. Do you remember what the last thing I did was? Are you paying attention? I'm not. We're 16 minutes in, guys. We're 60 minutes in. I need to come to a proper conclusion, don't I? Decimate. Let's try 0.05, because usually a torso. Okay, no, that was a mistake. 0.1. Apply. And then we'll put planar decimation on. Planar. 1 degree. Apply. There you go. That's a simple mesh now. I'm holding the Alt key, pressing H to unhide objects, which means I've got a bunch of facial hair on his face now, because they're in an unhidden folder. And this model is looking a lot better. I'll have to make the thumbnail of this video a before and after, shan't I? Yeah. Okay. Last step. I don't think it's strictly necessary, but a problem you might run into if you're, depending on your subjective taste, I suppose, is that this head is still rather large, and we might want to make this a bit smaller. Now, I'm using the S key here. Sorry. Use the S key to scale it down a little bit, make it look a bit better. This soft hat that he has isn't that bad for this, but if I were to look at a different hat, say I were to look at the Brody. Oh, Brody. If I press the N key to open the transform pane here, and I go to scale, if I click the padlocks on X and Y, leaving Z unpadlocked, and when I scale into the Z axis, you could. No, that's unnecessary. Yeah. Okay, uniform. I'm just going. Looks a bit small overall, doesn't it? Is that the helmet that looks small, or the whole head? Let's move the head up. I mean, I'm possibly overthinking things. G, Z, Z-axis, move the head upwards. And then we've got the neck, move the neck upwards, rotate it a little perhaps. Well, that does not look good at all. I've messed this model up, it was fine. Freezing the Z-axis on the neck and slimming it down with the S key. The head was fine, wasn't it? I'm sorry. I overthought this. Let's just put the head back. Remember, this will be like 15 mil, be like that. And there we go. We have ourselves a taller figure. I'm going to export him. I click something, press A for all, File, Export, STL. The recording software I'm using won't show the menu I see now, so I have to describe it to you. But on the right side, I've got a box that says selection only. I'm going to tick that. For scale, because I want this to be 15mm, let me check my scaling notes, but I think that means I want this to be like 1.8. Oh no, that would be based on an already upscaled export, so God, let me think. This model is about 6.3mm I to base, so what would that be? It'd be just under 3, wouldn't it? It'd be just under a factor of 3. It might be like... I'm so bad at maths, but I think it'll be about 2.8. we can measure it later in the part 2. And then we'll call him 15mm scale British Rifleman example. And he's been exported like this. And you know what? I'm gonna put this model in the video description, I think, as a little hidden freebie, because you watch the end and you can inspect my work firsthand. Obviously, there's so many other little things you could do. There are these buttons. You could make them smaller, make more of them. This is really like the involved process for the dedicated people that are really passionate about getting it right. We've got a rifle here, for example. We can. The rifles are a little taller than they should be. I mean, thicker vertically, because I have minimum thicknesses. Like the barrel has to be a certain thickness, and for it to look right, I had to make them taller. But you could slim down the rifle. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration. If you wanted to, the bolt didn't look right. If you wanted to scale different parts separately, we could select the rifle, press the tab key, click something, and then while the mouse is over it, press L to select all link parts. So that's the bolt. And I right-clicked and clicked Separate Selection. That removed the bolt, so now the bolts are separate. Let's do the padlocks. It's a separate object that I can play with. Yeah, okay, let's do what I was doing with the rifle. Let's slim the rifle down, but we're leaving the bolt alone for everything. Slim this down too, it's a separate object. Okay, for the bolt, press tab to go into object edit mode. So this time when I scale it, it scales centrally rather than to this little orange dot. Scale the bolt down, move it forward a bit. Yeah. Technically the barrel is now a little too ovular, so press L, select the barrel, S for scale, and Y-axis, which is the green line you can see, so I'm pinching it back in, so it's less of an oval. Technically this too is a bit too thick, this little trim, although I don't know, it is 15mm. I'm thinking too hard. I'm so sorry everyone, I'm wasting your time. The point of this video is just to show you there are more involved ways to rescale models. We've exported this guy, I'm going to export him again, just we changed the rifle too. And yeah, you can download this in the description. And what did we learn today? I'd say that if you wanted to do a quick and easy fix because you think the models are stubby or short, the easiest thing you can do is move the legs up and down. The original was sort of like this, and now we've got it like this. Use your basic sculpting tools to add some more details, reshape the legs to look a bit more in proportion. We changed the arms too. And if you want to go really crazy with it, you can start adding cloth texturing to everything else. But there you go. I hope this sells the Blender files to you as a bit of a playground, a toolkit for modifying models in ways that don't seem immediately apparent. And of course, if you're learning Blender or want to sculpt your own models, this might be a good tutorial for you, a little thing to play with. All I ask is that you do not include anything I have created in any work that you then distribute, be that free or paid. I hope that goes without saying, but you know, my livelihood, my sole income does come from making these. I will happily hand Blender assets and exporters and things over as part of my products for you to play with for your own amusement, for your hobby, but please don't commercially profit from or redistribute my work or things derived from my work to the public who have not paid for them, because then I can't afford my mortgage. Anyway, on that note, have a lovely day, and remember to check other videos on my channel. I will put a link to download this Rifleman in the video description, and I will also put a link to the Blender file I used. Thank you very much for your attention, and goodbye.